Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest tonight, Ashton Forbes. If you've never heard of him, you're going to hear about him tonight. He's been all over the interwebs talking about a very interesting story that we know very little about, MH370. And he's got something called MH370x that we'll have him explain to you. He is on Twitter. He is on Facebook, and we need you to go subscribe at both places. All the links to that will be below. Now, if you don't know, let's just real quick go here. The Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 is a really unique enigma and an outlier in social media realms, in mainstream media, and also in conspiracy theories. Now, what happened was Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, also known as MH370, disappeared on the 8th of March in 2014 while flying from Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia to its planned destination. The unique thing about this Boeing 777 is it had tons of important people on board. And even though there are claims, Ashton, and I'm sure you can probably fill us in on this, that a couple pieces of the ship may have been found over 2 years. The first piece wasn't found until 2015, potentially. I don't know how good that information is or if we can believe what they're saying because nothing else has been found. No people, I mean, just think of the amount of like floating buoys and stuff that are on that. This is a gigantic plane, folks. If you don't know what a Boeing 777 is, it is massive. There should be thousands of pieces washing up on beaches all over the place. And there was like nothing. I think they just made some crap up. And you've been covering the cover up. The families were paid off and the media was kind of silenced. So that's the background of MH370. If you don't know, you can just Google it. And then you've come on the scene in the last few weeks. You've come up with some footage. And look, I've been looking at fake UFO footage and lens flares of Nibiru and all kind of garbage for years. You know, hundreds of hours of it I've toiled through, lens flares and garbage posts. And I have, when I looked at this footage, it is undeniably something that I don't think can be debunked. All of the different angles, you've covered your butt as far as locating the satellites, the imagery, the angle of attack, the timestamps, the dating, that there's not a lot of flights going around out here, especially Boeing 777s. And then obviously, if you're going to come up with some footage like this that you pull just out of the ether, so to speak, but it probably was scrubbed. But like we all know on the internet, if you post it on the internet, you're doomed. It's there forever, no matter what they do. You come onto the scene and now I see you're being attacked. But so before we jump into it, who is Ashton Forbes? Because in the interview you did with Rex over at Leak Project, I know you have a top secret clearance. I know you do some stuff in there. Are they on your back? I mean, like, what's going on since you broke this crap? And independent of the UFO tards that are attacking you now, let's just learn about you and like the place you work. What are they doing to you now? Anything?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks a lot for having me on here, Diamond. I appreciate you giving the platform to a platform to this evidence. And I think you did a pretty good job of explaining the situation there in the background. I just came on the scene, in the last few months. I followed it as these videos reemerged on social media, mainly on Reddit, started tracking down the information, pulling up the old archives, formed an organization, MH370X, where we've got a team of dedicated volunteers who have been looking through news articles. In terms of who I am, I like to say I'm just a guy. I'm nobody special. I'm just passionately curious. And that's essentially a quote from Einstein. I don't have any special talents. But I do have a government clearance related to my job in healthcare IT. Perhaps that type of analytical skill set has allowed me to excel in this area of pulling up information, putting together the pieces of the puzzle that allow us to use these videos to really pull in the most evidence that any theory has put in to date. And so for me, in terms of why I've been doing this, it's really just a matter of getting to the truth. I think that we live in a time where we're so divided right now. All I want to do is figure out what is the truth of this plane. And then going back to my job, nothing has really changed, actually. They haven't been on my back at all. I took some extra lengths to make sure that I would be covered from the perspective of that clearance that I have and that the government wouldn't be able to retaliate against me.
So before we go any further,
Sure.
because I'm sure people are going to be confused, what the hell are we talking about?
Yeah. So we are talking.
So
Yeah,
let me give the
jump in.
preface, and you
Please.
tell me if I'm wrong, because
Yeah.
I'm independent. There is some footage that came out. I don't know if you
Yeah.
found it on the Wayback Machine or where you got it from. We'd love to know
Yeah.
of the flight of MH370 from some satellites from above. And what happens is these objects, a couple of them appear to be coming out of the ocean, start to circle the aircraft. They go through a cloud, and then right before they hit another part of a cloud, it goes through what appears to be a portal, and everything disappears.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
mind blowing.
Yeah, it is mind blowing. And I think that as I've talked to physicists and engineers, we've come to a better understanding of what's happening from the science perspective, which we'll be able to explain. When I first looked at these videos, I have to go ahead and throw some credit out to social media, Reddit specifically on the UFO subreddit. A lot of people dug into these videos early on. They showed their authenticity going back on the web archives, and you can find these. They're posted by an account named Regicide Anon just weeks after the incident. And on the receive date of the first one, which is a satellite video, and we'll show these videos in here in a few moments, it says it was received March 12th, 2014 by source protected. That's just 4 days after the event. Now, this essentially indicates that unless Regicide Anon is
someone
involved,
send you these videos?
no, they weren't sent to me. You can actually find them yourselves online. And this is where they had been posted on social media before, probably
So
multiple
you were
times.
scrubbing Reddit and you just came across this and was like, what is this? And you looked at it and you were like, holy shit.
Yeah, like you guys, I was a lurker probably, like you, and I've looked at probably since 2017 when I started getting interested in the UAP phenomenon from those DoD Navy leaks that came out. I've probably seen thousands of videos as too. I've never seen any that I thought like I want to go ahead and be an activist for proving these to be real. But the big thing for me was that I've always been interested in like weird plane crashes or any plane crashes in general, because I used to fly a lot for my job. Sometimes I still do. And I'm just very afraid of flying. So I want to know like why planes crash and whatever. So I looked into MH370 back then. I was never comfortable with what happened to MH370. I even knew before I saw these videos that the U.S. government had to know more about a rogue
There's no
777.
way,
There's just
period,
no way, right?
with the technology we had at
No
the
way.
time that you wouldn't be able to recover the ship or find out where it crashed.
We should have seen it the next day, right?
Right.
Like
Now, what people
everywhere.
have done in the early years, 2015 and 16, is they started showing like bathymetry maps of craters on the ocean floor. These people are so stupid. They don't understand those maps are delayed like 5 years, and that crater is not going to show up the next week when you're looking at Google.
Yeah.
It's so dumb. But I do digress. You should find tons of parts of this ship floating on the ocean. There's going to be freighters and ships all over. They would have found everything. They would have found bodies. There would have been stuff, and there was nothing. They did say there was a fragment here and there, and it's confirmed, but that leads you to believe it's a cover-up, and they didn't find anything, in my opinion.
Yeah, so we did a bunch of investigation, and we can say conclusively the plane didn't crash into the South Indian Ocean. The first main reason is there was no debris field found. That's impossible for a 777 crashing into the ocean, even on some kind of controlled descent. It was the most expensive and extensive search in history. Didn't find one piece of the plane. The debris that washed up was found by random people not affiliated with the official search. They found no black boxes in the place where they said it crashed. The SOSA system, the one that heard the Titan sub pop, didn't hear anything. Western Australia and Diego Garcia both have hydrophones. They didn't hear anything either. All these acoustic detections heard nothing. 2 radar systems, Indonesia and Australia, didn't see a plane going into the South Indian Ocean. 19 families signed a statement saying they could call the cell phones of the victims for up to 4 days. One even proved it on TV. Some social media sites showed them still being online. It's an active shipping route. There was no witnesses.
No. And no, there was an eyewitness that saw the plane, went inside their ship, came back out, and then didn't see the plane. They also didn't hear a crash or anything.
So that's a little
different. They would have seen smoke. If that plane is hitting the ocean at 800 miles an hour, or whatever terminal velocity, the explosion would have been extreme. Although lots of the theorists said that what happened was this guy just drove around and burned the fuel out.
Yeah, so the problem is that they have this plane, and that's another problem, is there's nowhere else for this plane to go. The fuel runs out, and they claim it crashed in the South Indian Ocean. We didn't find anything there. Also, none of the ELT emergency transponders went off. There's 4 redundant emergency transponders that go off only during crash. We didn't get any of those either. So we searched everywhere.
Now that's like a black box that after it crashes is like a beacon, like an avalanche beacon, beep, beep, and none of them worked.
Yeah, so we saw these videos, and
that's suspicious on face, isn't it?
Yeah, so like, there's no chance that this plane crashed into the South Indian Ocean. Then the question is, okay, what really happened to it? Now, fast forward to our videos, and when I see,
Let's dump that. Let's dump the
yeah, let's
video.
show the video here. So go ahead and pull it up if you want.
Okay.
I see this video on the left here. I'd seen this video back in 2014. This one on the left, I had seen this in 2014, and a lot of other people saw it in 2014 as well. And back then, I just had no idea to understand what I was even looking at. So let me start from the beginning here. These are side-by-side videos. We have independent videos that you can pull up, but I like to show it side by side so you can actually see that they're perfectly in sync with one another. We see this plane, and right away here, I'm going to pause it. You can see the smoke trail coming out of the plane in both videos. We
Yeah.
know this is smoke because these cumulus clouds here only form in low altitudes, and you can kind of see how low they are compared to the plane. Contrails only form at 30,000 feet. So that means that this is not contrails we're seeing
Well,
behind here.
contrails form between 18,500 and 28,000 feet.
And what we're looking at here is
And
about
contrails do not
7,000.
come from the tail of the plane. They come from the engines. So there would
Yeah.
be two trails merging as one. That's not what we're seeing here.
Yeah.
So when
these are
I
not
saw the
contrails.
evidence and your interpretation, I think that you're correct here. There's probably some kind of fire on the plane as it goes.
Exactly. So we think there's a fire, which would be indicative of these lithium-ion batteries that are on this plane, 221 kilograms of them. Now watch it. You see this orb and how fast this orb just flew in off the side of the screen here? This orb is going like Mach 3, like 2,000 miles an hour. And we can estimate that because it's going between 10 and 13 times faster than the plane. And this plane is actually descending, making a turn, a standard circle turn. So that means it's going between 150 and 200 miles an hour at this point. Now the orb ricochets past the plane, turns around like a boomerang, and starts circling it. Now this is the part where you can see the second orb. What's going to happen here is right near the water level, this orb is going to shoot across the water, and it's going to come up through this cloud. It's going to join the first orb. So there it comes up through the water. It's hard to see in this version, but there it is. And then a third orb comes flying out of the side of the screen. And now we have
now what
orbs.
I see there, Ashton, is the first orb. It's almost like has missile detection. It comes up and it detects like the tracking, object, right? And then it reads it first in 2 dimensions before the other ones come and join it. It almost like gives a quick 3D so that nothing, so that they're in perfect unison when they get up there.
Yeah, like it misses it, right? Like in the beginning, it like circles to the side of it. Like it's trying to figure out where it is, right?
Weird.
Exactly. And this is the first part where I'm like, okay, this is some kind of like tracking where it's tracking the plane. And then the other ones come flying in and they don't do that same thing. They immediately are right on it.
Yeah, they know where it is because of the other unit. Now, before we go any further, back in 2014, when they did investigations into the crash, did they know about this lithium ion payload and was it ever discussed?
We found some articles that actually do discuss it, but very, very few. It's almost never discussed in any official narratives. The fire scenario gets ruled out. I'm trying to remember what the exact reason is, but it doesn't make any sense to me because every witness supports the fire scenario.
Well, so I looked at all the articles, and then the final article that came out and there was none after was one that had the 5 theories on why it crashed. It was that one of the pilots, put everyone out of the main deck, that reduced the pressure. They all fucking asphyxiated and so on and so forth. It's all like these nonsense dialogues when if we know there were lithium ion batteries that long ago in the payload,
Yeah, that should have been that. And the funny part is like, we didn't know how dangerous they were back in 2014. If you go to the FAA's website and look up lithium ion battery fires, it starts in 2014 and it's like 9 incidents. And they actually banned them in the cargo bay of airplanes in 2015, the next year.
And I think that maybe the cargo bay would have been separated from the passengers, so they might have not died from the lithium ion fire.
Actually, these cargo bays are actually built to withstand fires up to like 1,700 degrees. So
the passengers were probably still alive based on the knowledge we have.
Hard to say exactly. I think so, but you have to realize if this lithium ion battery is exploded, it probably did depressurize the plane. So that's probably why they're flying so low, is they're trying to get enough oxygen for the passengers to be able to breathe. And these things are going to be billowing toxic smoke, which is what you see this smoke coming out of the back. So it's probably going through the air conditioning units. And there's these 2 AC vents right near the landing gear, which is where we think this is pouring out of the plane. It's kind of the point you mentioned earlier. It's not coming from the engines. It's coming from like the middle of the plane here. Now, let's go back
before we go any further, if this is some type of advanced technology being deployed here, maybe as a test, because they're going to easily be able to say, oh, it crashed, blah, blah, blah. They're testing this technology.
Could be.
they would have had time. So how long had this plane been missing, and what was going on in the meantime, so that maybe like these black ops or these secret operations would have been like, did they have hours to be
Yeah,
like,
here, let me
okay,
switch
let's
real
go
quick to
do
this
it with
one.
this.
So we can see this is how the plane goes down, because a lot of people don't know the visualization of how this goes out.
Yeah.
So this plane takes off at 1642, and we'll go back to the other video in a sec, but at 1721 is when the plane goes dark. This is 1 minute after there's a very calm, good night MH370 in the cockpit.
Yeah.
And I think that this is the point where the fire explode, like kind of bursts and begins, because Mike McKay is on an oil rig and he sees this plane on fire at this exact time. There's even 9 witnesses along the coast that hear a loud noise at exactly this time as well.
So
now
off the eastern coast of Malaysia, there's a
Yep.
witness that
South
sees a
China
plane on
Sea.
fire. Okay.
Yeah. And so now what happens is this plane turns around and it goes to Penang Langkawi International Airport, which this Wired article that actually talks about a fire says this is the right location to go to. This has got a nice long landing strip that you would use where you can land a 777-200. And apparently the altitude is really good here. There's not a lot of mountains in the way or anything like that. You can
Yeah.
fly low. So it goes back to the logical location where you would find a you go through an emergency situation, but it doesn't land. It keeps going, presumably because the landing gear is either damaged or can't be deployed for whatever reason. And the next thing you're supposed to do is try to land on your belly. And the problem with that is you're filled with fuel. So you might try to dump the fuel, but you're on fire, right? If you're on fire and you try to dump the fuel, like
Wow.
that doesn't seem good. So the next thing you're supposed to do in the pilot manual is you're supposed to land in the ocean. Now, the problem with landing in the ocean is this time here, which says 1752, that's 1:52 a.m. So it's middle of the night. It's pitch black. We checked the moon. The moon phase was down. The sun is down. So this plane is pretty much doomed at this point, because if you try to land in the ocean, the plane's going to rip apart. It's not like Sully Sullenberger landing in the Hudson River. If you try to land in the ocean, your plane's going to rip apart. Also, I don't know if a lot of
And
people
then
know
you're going to
this.
get eaten by sharks.
Yeah, a lot of mainland Chinese nationals don't learn how to swim either. It's not like in the West where everybody learns generally from like a young age. So this plane was filled with Chinese nationals as well. So this is a really, really bad situation. We presume, because the Malaysian Minister of Defense does an interview where he says that they don't have identification of the plane, but they know it's not hostile and they know it's a civilian aircraft. The only way that's possible is if they actually had communication with the plane, because otherwise there's no way you could rule out it being hijacked, right?
Now,
And they don't.
additionally,
Yeah, go ahead.
additionally, there is a absorbent amount of employees from one specific company, which is
Freescale.
abnormal, because you would never have this many high-level executives on a single plane just for insurance purposes.
Yeah, and they weren't executives, but they were high-level engineers and scientists. I'd argue those people are more important than your executives, right?
Yeah,
They're the ones
yeah,
who know how
they're
everything
doing it.
operates. You know, they know they're doing the stuff, right? So you've got
So
these
what
20
company are they
people.
from?
Yeah, Freescale Semiconductors, and we found that this company is tied to defense as well as tied to potential emergence of room temperature superconductors. We found a 2005 NSA, National Security Agency report that talks about Freescale Semiconductors and how they've been advancing their semiconductors to potentially achieve superconductivity. And it says that this will only happen by 2010 or 2012 if the government actually spends funds to support it. So these people might be directly tied to the technology and these orbs that we see in the videos.
Well, interestingly enough, Ashton,
Yeah,
you probably are
go
not
ahead.
aware, there have been several room temperature superconductor hoaxes over the last few years. The most recent just got debunked in the last few months.
Yeah. And I would argue that it's possible that room temperature superconductivity has been suppressed and that those debunks may not even be accurate, right? Because if you think
No,
about it,
it's for show as
Yeah.
propaganda to divert. Like, no, we don't have that technology.
yeah. I mean, I think that that's the idea, right? Yeah, to have people say, okay, we don't have that. But here's the thing: if we're looking at these orbs, then we do have that technology, and it's being suppressed from us. Now, going back to your point here, we have about 1 hour and 20 minutes, or 1 hour till we get to this point, and then 1
Okay.
hour and 20 minutes before we get to where this witness is. And this witness is on a boat here, and she sees this glowing orange plane. Now, if this plane was on fire and they're battling it using the fire extinguishing devices, it's going to be releasing this bromine gas. And you can't keep these lithium ion batteries out. You can like put them out, they keep coming back, put them out. So they're probably deploying all the fire extinguishing devices. And now it's glowing orange because this gas is permeating throughout the whole plane while they're battling this fire. And that's what the witness sees here, a glowing orange plane consistent with a halogen lamp. And at this point now, this witness sees this and it's flying very low. Again, they've recreated, they think it's about 10,000 feet. And it circles around the plane or around the boat. And this is where she goes inside to put the kettle on after like 5-10 minutes of watching this plane.
Yeah.
And she comes back out and there's no plane anymore. And so this is the part two where I asked her what time this happened because I actually got in touch with her. She
Wow.
said she thought it was 1840 UTC, which is weird because I go and check the old news articles and they say that when they lost contact with the plane was not 1822. They say the old news articles say 1840 is the last contact with the plane. This is also the exact time and location where the official narrative says this plane turns into the South Indian Ocean and goes down here to the south. So now, if you think about it from a conspiracy perspective, that just means that everything from this point forward is a lie, right? And what really happens is our videos happen here around this time.
Well, wait a minute. You said the official narrative is they lost contact at 1822, correct?
So they changed it later on. And
Yeah.
what happened is
So
this is
first it
based
was
on this
40,
radar data.
and then
Yeah.
it was, and then what was the alteration to 1822?
1815, and then it's 1822, and I'm still not sure which one of those two times it is. If it's 1815,
So they're just cutting off the last 20 minutes because they don't want anyone to think anything
they
happened.
don't want anyone to figure it out, right?
Right.
They don't want people to. So, and the Malaysian defense, like military guy, is super sketchy about the information. They make people look in the South China Sea for like a week and a half while they know that they have radar data that shows this plane going over here. So, like from the beginning, everything is sketchy about the situation. They don't release the radar data for weeks. They don't release the Inmarsat pings, which say that it goes into the South Indian Ocean for weeks.
All
I
right.
look at these Inmarsat pings real quick, and
yeah.
there's an anomaly right at this exact time at 1839. All of a sudden, at 1839, in this Excel data, it's just zeros.
So
and then after
they're
that,
being
it's just
disingenuous. They're trying to scrub the timeline. Let's finish the video and show
I'm going
people
back.
what happened in your footage.
So now we're watching it, and now we've got an idea. We had 1 hour and 20 minutes to respond. And so now here we're watching these videos, and
Oops, there we go.
okay, and then we can see these orbs again come in. I'm just going to show the whole thing. It's only 1 minute long, right? This happens very fast. Our orbs get around this plane in like 15 seconds. We got 3 orbs around the plane, and now they're in this triangle pattern, and it looks like they're mapping the plane. They're creating a sphere around the plane. It also looks like the movie Contact a little bit if you were to map it. It also looks like an atom with electrons flowing around it.
Well, and they switch direction twice right there. So once they get a flow counterclockwise, they go back clockwise.
Yeah, and watch this part again here too. Look at the orbs. Look, see these black trails? This line is in front of this orb. This line's not even behind the orb. This is in front of the orb here.
Now, that would be indicative of what Bob Lazar said. They're creating an anti-gravity space in front. They're folding time and they're moving forward into it.
Exactly. And so and I was just released a thing from Salvatore Pius's paper that explains this as well. Is essentially this is like a pulse that's using some type of vibrational effect to create this geodesic here, which is like its own gravity. And
well, according to Lazar, it would be a very high end, it would be a stable version of a very unstable element, like element 115 or higher.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't know if they necessarily need one element 115 for this. Like, it's hard to tell, but sure, either way, they're creating this geodesic, right? And it gets to the first cloud here, and then the formation changes, and then they become vertical, and they stay vertical until we see this zap happen. Now, you can also tell from the thermal that there's a heat signature on the orb that's spinning around on its axis. We think this is the monopole, essentially the point where the laser or whatever is coming from. And I would basically just miss it. It came so fast. Now, when we watch this thermal, this
it looks so fake, man. It's crazy. But if this is a technology we don't know about, what is it going to look like?
Exactly. That's what a lot of people would argue, right? And we can talk a little bit more about that. But when we watch it happen here as well, what happens right before this zap is all these monopoles.
They look like they converge.
Yeah, they do converge on the plane. Yeah. And in the last frame, the plane actually gets colder and it begins to blur. And it actually shrinks a little bit as well. It gets a little bit smaller. It's hard to see in the full speed, but now it's just, you can see this actually now, this flash on the right side here accurately illuminates all the clouds, which is very odd because if it was fake, you would think that's a very extensive detail to put in. These clouds are really, really detailed, right? So they would have
and they're so close. They're just tens of meters from the plane.
Yeah. And notice as well, the clouds don't really move here, which is indicative that we're not looking at a black hole. And we're not looking at an explosion because, you expect the clouds to either blast away or get sucked in.
Black hole is a false narrative using mathematics. So this is something much different.
Yeah. So this is what we think is happening here is a transitional phase state change of the plane. The plane is changing states and the camera can't even catch what happens next, which is this plane accelerates to a point where it just shoots off faster than we can even see. And
well, and the experiments have been done where they could do this with single atoms.
Exactly.
in transitional foams.
Yep, you
So
got it. And so
may,
now what we see
maybe
here,
that's baby steps that they're telling us they could do it with an atom, but we don't know that 30 years they're 30 years advanced and they could do it with a plane. And this is the first test
you're pretty much
ever
dead
of
on.
that technology.
It could be one of the earlier ones, or it could be proven too. And maybe they're saving the people. It's hard to say, but I think you're on it, which is that this is a macroscopic quantum coherence. Is
Yeah.
that what they're
Oh
doing here? Is
wow, you have a terminology. You've got the
you've
terminology.
got to get it right. You know, it's important, is what I've learned from science. And so what that means is they're able to somehow get these electrons to cohere around the plane to treat it like an atom, so that you can treat something that's macroscopic like something that's quantum. What this
Now, folks, if
requires,
you're listening, what would happen is the object that's maybe falling to its death would rip out on the other side anywhere else that they placed it on Earth or in our 3D realm.
yeah,
So
exactly.
it
It
would
could go
still be
anywhere.
crashing. So how would they save it at that point?
Yeah, so we probably do have to adhere to the laws of conservation of momentum. So
Yeah.
probably it's going to come out at the other side, at whatever speed they were able to decelerate it to, or what have you. But that's the part we're not sure about. I mean, what we
Yeah.
know is we didn't find a crash anywhere on the Earth right now, at least as we know for now. So that's part of the issue, is that it seems like it must
Well,
have
and
survived, because we don't find plane parts somewhere in, like,
if
you
you
know,
want to go
Afghanistan or whatever.
crazy, if you have the technology to move through that space from one region of space to another, which would be similar to a wormhole, only
Yeah.
you're controlling it, you could literally probably have it come out on the other side stationary, just come
I'm
out and
glad you
be
brought that up.
sitting there. It
So
might
that's
even be sitting, hovering above the ground.
Yeah, a physicist actually told me exactly that. It's just that, and I was thinking about that recently too. I haven't really reported on this, but if you can speed up a plane to the speed of light, you can theoretically slow it down to just being completely stopped as well.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe you can just have it appear, be completely stopped, or at whatever speed you want. Right. So I think that's pretty interesting, because that means this plane could go pretty much anywhere. And the way this is kind of described as, if people like Marvel movies, think of Quicksilver in the movie X-Men, where that guy can move super fast. And the other thing you could think of is like a bug. So why do flies move so fast despite them being so tiny? The answer is, the less mass, the faster you can move. So the idea here would be they could theoretically create in some kind of electromagnetic shell around the
Make it
plane,
zero mass.
make it zero mass. And
Yeah.
now it can go the speed of light. See, I like talking to you. You're already ahead of me. You know exactly what we're trying
Yeah.
to get at from the
Well,
scientific
that's
perspective.
obviously what these things are doing.
Yeah.
They're mapping it spatially to reduce the mass of the object, and they're equidistant at the very end. They're spinning, they're creating some type of magnetic field, which will
Yeah.
drop the mass to zero. It's almost like, but at the same time, this technology, if it exists, what these orbs also have to be doing is mapping every single atom in the entire plane, all the people, their exact positions, memorizing it and replicating it on the other side.
Yeah, and I don't think we're talking about dematerializing and rematerializing them, but we do
No,
need
but
to be
some
able to
kind
keep
of a
track of the
spatial
size, right?
rip where
Yeah, you have
you
to know the
are
size of what's
you
happening.
can, it's conservation of mass and energy somehow in this thing that you just move through space and time instantaneously.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, people would be wiped of their memory. They could be retarded.
Yeah.
They wouldn't remember. I mean, like, you have an arm coming out of your head. Could be like the early Philadelphia experiment reports.
Yeah,
This
I think
may
that
be a refined version decades later.
if there's not a field around them, then these people are probably in bad shape, which makes me think that, because we have this fire scenario, again, we see the smoke here, that
Yeah.
makes me think that they're attempting to save this plane. And because we see this endothermic event in the thermal here, when we see this event go off, it's cold. It's completely black in this thermal, meaning it's cold. And that means it's absorbing energy. It's not an explosion, which is a release of energy.
Yeah.
So what could be happening is it could be absorbing the energy from
Here
these
they come
lithium-ion
in,
batteries.
and then it goes black.
See this? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it goes completely black. And so
That's
this is
awesome.
important. It makes us think that the person added this thermal layer intentionally over this electro IR camera so that we'd see these details very clearly. If it's black and white, it's going to be a lot harder to tell what's going on here. Now, if
So
these
who leaked
lithium ion
this?
batteries, they have runaway lithium ion batteries happen because they have so much energy in them. So this could be the reason why they are using this endothermic event, is it can potentially absorb the energy, or maybe those batteries are somehow a catalyst. I'm still trying to learn more about the science, but I'm just now starting to get the terms correct.
Right.
But I think you nailed it, is that there's some kind of, I think it's described as an azimuth, like some kind of circle happening around this plane that's allowing it to obtain this quantum effect. and somehow keeping these people alive if it's successful, or if to your point, if this is something that's being tested, like the Philadelphia experiment, maybe it is a situation where these people, didn't make it. And we can't really be sure. We can only speculate based on some circumstantial evidence that's out there.
So who do you think leaked this information?
Yeah. So I think I dug around and I looked around for people that fit the bill and that would have been charged with like espionage or, willful retention of classified data. And we have a lot of evidence from looking at that. Like we can see that the leaker was probably U.S. military personnel because we're looking at U.S. military assets, probably an operator because they have to know how to remove the HUD information, how to add this thermal layer on this likely Raytheon IR camera. They probably had an emotional reaction because the regicide anon description says received March 12th, which is only 4 days after the event. That also indicates they might have been there that night. They cropped out the drone from the satellite video, which is indicative of them trying to reduce the amount of damage if foreign adversaries were to see this. And they probably had to convince the regicide anon account that they were legit, because the regicide anon account waited like 9 weeks to actually upload it. They received it March 12th, but the upload date in the archive says May 19th. They also might have thought they were looking at UFOs. They might not even been brought into this technology. And because the regicide anon description says satellite video, airliner, and UFOs, doesn't even say MH370 on it. So it's possible the person that leaked this didn't even know. So I dig around and I find this guy, Lieutenant Commander Edward C. Lynn, who I think is the guy, and I think he's a hero. He has experience in signals intelligence, which is what all these assets are talking to each other with. It's basically like a big network of assets, from the satellites, the command satellite, to the drone as well. If you Google SIGINT payload, the top hit says MQ-1C Gray Eagle. That's the drone we think we're looking at. He was part of this Special Project Squadron 2 Wizards, the VPU-2. His last deployment was February 2014 to March 2016. But he gets reassigned on March 25th, 2014.
Wait a minute. What drone? So there was not the 3 objects spinning around the plane. There was a drone
right here. We can see the drone here, right?
Yeah. What are you talking about?
This is the MQ-1. Oh, sorry. If you're sharing, I'm not sharing screen. Hold on.
No.
Sorry, I lost my share screen.
So it's not one of the 3 orbs. This is something else.
Yeah, so one of them is a satellite, and this is the drone. You can see the drone, the nose of the drone here. This is an MQ-1C Gray Eagle.
Oh, that's where one of the angles of the footage is from a drone. That's the thermal, and the other one that's natural color is from the satellite.
Yes, exactly. And that's using a false color IR. These are both being taken at night. So that video, that location indicates
the guy operating the drone is inside. He's the leaker. He watched this. His mind was blown. He's like, I've got to show someone this. This doesn't make sense.
Right. And he's probably in an airplane. So because KT, that witness on the boat, sees 2 other airplanes in the area, and the French dad was told that the U.S. government knows exactly what happened and that there was 2 AWACS in the area. So this guy, Edward C. Lynn, actually flies those AWACS. That's what this VPU-2 flies. They fly the P-8 Poseidon and the Ares EP-3E. And both of these planes potentially have computer screens in them. They operate drones. They can potentially look at the satellite video as well, side by side. So this investigation into this guy begins in April 2nd, 2014. He gets reassigned March 25th, 2014, just weeks after MH370, just a month after he gets assigned to this unit. And he gets arrested in September of 2015.
Whoa.
In 2014, in May of 2014, he gets caught with 2 flight manifests in his flight suit from a deployment that included search and rescue code names. That's just 2 months after the incident. And he had already been reassigned after that. The window of time just indicates that he had to have been part of MH370, either right there that night or part of the later search operation. This FBI sting, they put a bunch of fake.
So they set him up with this other garbage and arrest him a little bit later.
Exactly. And they set him up with all this other stuff. They do a sting operation on him. The FBI does. They like do some kind of like get him to sleep with some woman and try to like have her like get information out of him to try to prove he's a spy. This was the first major incident of espionage by an active duty member of the Navy since the end of the Cold War. The charges were going to end up in life in prison for him. They threw the book at this guy. They threw a bunch of fake charges on there. Recently, I found more information that he didn't know what he was being charged with when they interrogated him.
Right, because they planted these flight logs. There's no reason to steal them. There's no, I mean, it's so stupid. They manufacture something that can send him to jail for life, period.
Yeah, and because look at the danger of all this, right? And
so did he get locked up?
So his charge sheet's heavily redacted. We can't find anything about it. He's privy to the Navy's black program portfolio. He had knowledge that could be useful to adversaries, but they eventually admitted it wasn't really a spy case, and they had no evidence that he exchanged any sensitive information with anyone from China. The defense argued that the classified information in question is available on the internet. That, to me, that's just like, okay, bingo. And then he got abused while he was in prison. He ended up taking a plea deal. So they convince him, my mind is they convince him that no, this actually wasn't UFOs. Like, this was our secret technology. Like, because he probably just thought he wasn't doing that much damage if it's just UFOs, right? But the moment you say, no, this is our secret technology, then they force him into a plea deal. He gets a 9-year sentence, even after a plea deal. And then they shave off 3 years because he agrees to work with the NCIS and the FBI. And then he takes responsibility for the charges he was actually guilty of, which is just 2 charges of classified information, like mishandling classified information. And I did a Freedom of Information Act request to both the FBI and NCIS. I said, give me everything about this guy's case. A week later, NCIS sends me back from the head of legal. They reject the FIA and Freedom of Information Act in total to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. Like, okay.
Oh, that guy was Epstein.
This guy, like, I'm like, and the FBI hasn't responded.
Either that or he flipped and he's totally on the inside now, or he's not.
Oh, yeah, he flipped.
He's
flipped
no longer
sure.
above surface.
He flipped.
He's one of the other.
So I've already reported this, but I looked into him and we were able to find a phone number. I called the phone number.
What kind of world do we live in where FOIA requests can be denied? FOIA. This is insane.
Yeah, so that's the weirdest part, because in 2009, Obama actually made FOIA requests easier to pull. But this is actually an Obama era exemption that they quote in my denial. And so there's very few reasons they can deny them. And so the 2 things that they list are like classified intel related to defense or like this foreign policy. But as we know, it wasn't really a spy case. None of the espionage charges stuck. Yeah. So the only thing that makes sense then is this defense, right? So when I appeal, that's how I'm probably going to appeal, is say, well, how can this be foreign related if this guy wasn't a spy, right? And I want them to admit that, oh, okay, it's just in the interest of national defense. Because if so, then is this what he leaked? Or is this what we're looking at right here? Right? Because to me, this is interest of national defense right here, right? Whatever we're seeing on the display here.
Yeah, Ashton, I want to really bring it all together here in the end of the podcast here. For those that are listening, when I was in 3rd grade, I was in 3rd grade, my father brought home some material from his place of business, and he had it on the kitchen table after dinner. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, oh, it's stealth material. It allows us to line a plane with it and make it invisible. This is 1981. The stealth bomber didn't come out for a very long time after that or was revealed to the public. And I said, oh, that's so cool. Tomorrow is show and tell. Can I bring it to school? It's a piece of foam. It looked like a foam bed a mattress overlay. You know, it was like some black foam, but they were pointy cylinders like this, like pyramids, real steep. And there was just a piece of foam with all these pointy cylinders. And I brought it to school and I had show and tell, and I explained them that this is stealth material that makes planes invisible. My teacher thought it was so cute. Everyone clapped or whatever, show and tell. And then I sat back down. He let me go into school with top secret material because he knew no one would believe what I said. And he knew that the technology was so advanced that even if I brought it to show and tell, it didn't matter. Lo and behold, in the 90s, the F-114A was revealed after some top secret footage came out. And it's lined with the material my father had a decade before that he let me take into grade school. The point being is that the technology we are aware of, like people are now talking about directed energy weapons. I'm like, bro, that's a laser. That shit came out in 1970. I mean, the Soviets had that technology in the 60s. You're just learning about it because it took 50 years. They couldn't keep it secret for 50 years. So the technology that we're at today is so far advanced. Think about it. How old are you, Ashton?
Yeah, I'm 41.
All right. In my lifetime, I'm 51. In my lifetime, when I was 12, they came out with the first computer you could own. It was 6K. 6. Yeah. You could basically do like 3 pages of BASIC and it was full. Then we went to 30, 150K. I mean, that was when I was growing up. We went from retarded abacus to right now, the technology we have in just 4 decades, and you think that the technology that we're being told about is technology we have, you are being lied to.
Especially
And the whole
power.
alien abduction conspiracy is the U.S. government and the black operations, whatever you want to call them, shadow government. They're testing these technologies. I believe, and you and I talked about this, that 100% everything that Bob Lazar has said, that we have ancient technology from advanced races that are not currently abducting us. Trust me, that the U.S. government has reversed engineered this technology and is testing it. Now, what's even more crazy is all of the synchronicities, like the Simpsons predict this and that, etc. You know what I'm getting at? That I think that the next psyop is what everyone's been talking about in plain sight, that the alien abduction or the alien fight with humanity, to bring us all together in that one world government is a reality. And maybe this MH370 test has something to do with how they're going to pull it off. What do you think it has any connection? What are your thoughts?
To be honest with you, I was never really part of the UFO communities or conspiracy communities before this.
Yeah, that's
but
what's interesting. That's why I trust you. First of all, if you're listening to this podcast, like, I'm a good judge of character. I know there's no Martian program. People live there up with decades with blue chickens and all this garbage coming out from Gaia and the whole fake UFO phenomenon. I mean, I interviewed years ago the hubcap guy, I don't even want to mention his name. We're taking pictures of hubcaps and saying, why doesn't no one follow us anymore? I'm like, because you're a fraud. It's all a fraud. Let's get to the bottom of it. And I think that the bottom of it is a very bad place. We all know that these shadow governments or shadow ops or Illuminati, call it whatever you want. Whatever they're doing is not in our best interest. And the next step, the depopulation already started. The next step is going to be some alien intervention garbage.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the things I kept saying when I tried to give disclaimers to people early on, because I'm trying to break down these fake narratives that you would hear. One of them is definitely, I don't believe there's going to be some alien invasion thing, and I think that they might come with that kind of narrative. A lot of people say, oh, this is the fake alien invasion, whatever. Like, we're not dealing with any alien invasion stuff in these videos. I think that what we're seeing here is our technology for sure. I don't know how deep this rabbit hole goes. It's getting pretty damn deep, to be honest with you. Like, I've even found when these people were silenced, the families of the victims, they all signed these settlements because it's been so long and they've had no answers. And eventually, if they want to get paid, they have to sign a settlement. Like, I found out that the U.S. Supreme Court judge that prevented it from being ruled in the United States is Ketanji Brown Jackson, current Supreme Court justice. She got promoted 2 years later by Joe Biden. I'm just looking at him like, okay, man, now this is just like, I don't know how deep this goes, but it's starting to get really weird in my mind.
Bro, my research began in 2010 when I started to research the revolving door between Big Ag, the FDA, and our federal government. And once I hit that wormhole where the people that are approving food that's safe to eat are the same people that are approving pesticides that will kill you, that then are revolved back into the federal government as the liaison for the Food and Drug Administration, which then get hired as a CEO at a pharmaceutical company, you start to say, what in God's name is going on here?
Yeah, I get a little worried about like this, not necessarily nepotism, but like I scratch your back, you scratch my back stuff that happens in government. And that's definitely like what I'm worried about here with a lot of this is that there's a lot of people implicated in this, both sides of the political spectrum potentially. And so, yeah, I don't know how deep this goes. For me, this has been a journey of discovery and finding out like, okay, yeah, wow, here maybe is the biggest conspiracy ever. We might be looking at free energy capability here, fusion power. We might be looking at all kinds of stuff that could just change the entire world. I think that the Department of Energy is probably the ones that are hiding this. I even think that a lot of people in the military probably don't think this stuff is real because it's so compartmentalized. Like, you have to be like very specific access in order to even know this is
my
real,
father, right? Let's get to the bottom of it. My father revealed this to me in the late 80s. Conversations I had with them, they don't have this type of clearance anymore. It was back then, it was specially compartmented information, SCI, which has since changed. They change it every decade or so. But he explained to me, which he's not allowed to, and maybe he's almost, he's in his 80s, so he doesn't have, I'm sure they won't come and kill him where he's retiring. But because everyone knows this. Everyone's been revealed to this. You go into a building. Well, first of all, he revealed to me that there are underground networks that connect the White House to the Pentagon, where the Joint Chiefs of Staff move along in these underground railroads that are open air. They're not that fast. You know, they're not covered like a normal subway. It's like a golf cart kind of situation in a cave, where they can go from building to building, completely safe from nuclear explosions. That's how deep these tunnels are. Then you come up into the Joint Chiefs of Staff, etc. You can also come up into buildings. There are certain sections of the Pentagon where this particular compartmented information exists. You get a code, like a code card. You get access to a door. You walk into a door. You go down to a hallway with thousands of doors. Your door 198, you have the key code to that door. You go into the room. It's like a hotel, a motel more like it. You go into an office room. There's a desk. The information you read is there. You get to read it. Then there's a slot. You put it in. It gets shredded and burned. And then you put the card in. It gets destroyed. You can't leave the room until the information you received and the key that you entered is destroyed. Then you get out of the room. This is above top secret. And there are only certain people that get the information. So even 40, 50 years ago, no one knows what's going on. You know one thing, this other guy knows another thing. If you put 8 together, they may know a little bit, but you would need 50 people to figure out that you have anti-gravity or a wormhole machine. No one knows what's going on. There's like, this is a superconductor no one can know about. Like, that's all he knows. Yeah, he doesn't know that it makes a wormhole the planes can fly through, and he gets the information. So this type of shit has been going on for decades. Not only that, in the secret psyop arenas, it's been going on in academia. Starting in the 80s and the 90s, when I got into academia, when I went to get my master's degree, they separated chemistry from physics, from geology. They were all in one building. Back in the 80s, they separated them into different floors and buildings. That way, you couldn't be actually broad-based in your knowledge to understand maybe about magnetic reversals or cosmic impacts, or things that could affect humanity that could send us back to the Stone Age. You wouldn't know that. And the reason they've hidden that from the public is because they want everyone to be good sheep, go along in their slave lives, go to their jobs, toil their whole lives until they die, and feed the machine. We live in a slave society. I think we're about to have a rude awakening in the near future, because that's what my channel is based on. Cosmic catastrophes always happen. And I think that this technology is a big part of the bigger picture.
Yeah. No, I think that a couple of things you said that were really interesting to me. One thing I want to say, though, is that everything I've been revealing is public info. I don't have any, compartmentalized information. My job isn't related to any technology or UAPs or anything like that we see here. But there was a situation where I found who the general was who's potentially in charge of this. And Freedom of Information Act requested all their emails from the NRO, which I know is like the satellite organization. They control the satellites. And there was nothing. So yes, even though that doesn't give me information, I can glean that, okay, they're not using conventional communications for this. So that thing you mentioned about, destroying that, like everything's got to either be on paper probably, right? And then it's being shredded instantly, whatever. So there's no paper trail for any of these kind of operations. Which I found was kind of interesting in terms of some of the stuff that you just mentioned.
Right, because you can't find any corroborating information, so to speak.
Exactly. As opposed to the Edward C. Lynn thing where they say, yeah, we've got it, but we're just not going to give it to you, right? So quite a bit.
Can you imagine if that drone operator, he's like mid-level military, whatever he is, there's only 2 guys ever that could see this information, because they know all we got to do is kill those guys. They're in the middle of nowhere. We could probably hit them with a missile, or we could ruin their lives later when they find out what they did. So, I mean, this is all on purpose. This is the Jeffrey Epstein effect. And in fact, I think he was being used for was this type of sabotage, espionage, and blackmail.
Yeah.
If you can get everyone in compromising positions where you have material that could ruin their lives or their careers, you're basically in control of everything. Now, okay, Ashton, you've just dabbled your feet into the conspiracy theory worlds. You're about to get attacked. You think it's just begun. It's going to get worse.
Oh, yeah. I was going to mention that next.
I think that I have some advice to you. Just brush your shoulder off. These people are psychopaths. in social media, there's ways to block these people, eliminate
Oh, yeah.
them. Don't eliminate the people that are important to the dialogue or the story.
Oh, yeah,
You gotta love your enemies and keep them close, so to speak. But what is okay? So you've dabbled here. What do you think the bigger picture is? Is it just that we have advanced technology and they're hiding it, or is there some deeper thing going on with the capture of this plane? Perhaps.
I think we mentioned the 20 Freescale semiconductor engineers. I think they're
Yeah.
probably tied to the technology that we see. So I think that there's a motivation there to either keep them, prevent them from going to China, or like you said, could be a weapons test on a doomed plane because it's doomed anyway, right? I imagine I lean towards the saving them because this was on fire. You could just let it crash if you want them to disappear. And also using it as a weapons test seems like a lot of conspiracy cover up that you have to do in order to pull that off. It's really risky. But it could be any of those. To me, I think the bigger thing is why are they keeping it secret? And I think there's a couple routes. Is like you mentioned, it could be a matter of this that it's too disruptive for socioeconomic situations. It's going to wipe out multiple industries, wipe out all the Middle East and fossil fuels. The other thing could be they could be afraid of this technology creating doomsday weapons. One thing I just posted to Twitter, I actually argued that you could use this technology to blow up a whole planetoid or a whole planet. And that's the thing that I think makes the most sense is that, if you give this type of technology to, let's say, like terrorists, let's say ISIS, for example, back in the early 2010s, how do you stop an individual who is, willing to blow themselves up from destroying a whole country, destroying the whole planet potentially? Maybe the answer to the Fermi paradox and why we don't see other civilizations out there is because we all just blow ourselves up when you reach a certain level of technical advancement, right? So that's the part that actually spooks me the most as I've dug into this is like, beginning, it was about MH370, getting the answers for the families of the victims, the pilot that was vilified, the witnesses that were all discredited, and potentially the leaker who leaked this, who basically made a huge sacrifice, went into prison. But then you go into the technology and you're like, wow, okay, what are the real implications here of this technology, right? And I start to think, like, if this wasn't about MH370, I would probably just be quiet about it because I just think about the implications and I go, man, like, we can change the circumstances of so many people, but what if the cost is destruction of the planet, right? I don't want to be responsible for that. But again, I am the kind of person that values the truth over everything. And so we're in this for the long haul. I don't care how many people vilify me. I've got podcasters who looks like they're working with spooks to try to discredit me and working with literal people who are in chat rooms who are talking about trying to disconnect me from this case. And I don't give a crap about any of that. I say, come and get it. I am not afraid. I don't care what happens. We are going to get the truth no matter what. And anything they do to me, every time they try something, it just backfires back on them. Because as you can tell, I'm an honest person here. And as long as I just keep being honest and keep doing my thing, then it's going to be really hard for them to try to discredit me. And I agree with you. That probably will. It's probably just beginning. But it's okay.
Well, I
I'm
think the
ready for
good
it.
news is, and we learned something today talking to each other, is that based on all these specially compartmented type of things, the breakdown of science, they've been separating everything since the 80s, that in order to use the technology, you probably need to bring 6 scientists together at that last moment and say, this is what you've been working on, blow their minds, and that it can only happen if they work together to make it happen. And then you've limited it to anyone knowing except those people.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And then it's like, okay, now you have to avoid a Bob Lazar situation, right? Where one of these people gets out and they start talking and blabbing. And I don't know. I like to think of the good in people when they're not killing people out there. And I hope they don't take this as a challenge for me. As long as they stick to just discrediting me, that's fine. If they do try to escalate in any way, then I'm just going to keep pumping the information out more. Like, I know who the name of the general is. I deleted the previous post. I can post it again. I know the people who are implicated in this. The evidence is extremely compelling. Last time I posted it, the general's information had over 120,000 views. If I post it again, I feel like it's going to get over 250,000. So, just please
It's
leave me alone.
layers of exposure. So let's keep it up. My channel is going to introduce it to a whole group of another people. And they know we're shadow banned. Share this information on your social media. Hit up Ashton Forbes on Twitter. Subscribe there. He's also over on Facebook. We need you to go over here
I'm
and get
not on Facebook. YouTube, you mean YouTube?
I'm saying YouTube. Yeah.
Let's get this. Ashton. Yeah.
Yep. Ashton Forbes on YouTube. Let's get this to 3,000 tonight. And just the people watching, hit it live tonight because we're going to probably do this 8 p.m. on Magnetic Reversal News. subscribe right now. And let's get them to 3,000 and then share this out. And let's see what we can do when we get the truth out there about maybe some hidden technology. And maybe maybe it's not nefarious. Maybe this is aliens, Ashton, and they were trying to save the people. And they then suck their brains out and use their DNA to make more alien hybrid babies. Who knows?
Again, I don't like to set the narratives for people. I'm just trying to get the evidence out there, and people can believe whatever they want about it. People want to believe it's
And
aliens.
you can pretty much make up
I don't
anything
mind,
you want
right?
on a dime.
Yeah.
All right, this is fun. Before we shut down
it.
here, we're about to go. Yeah. This is a perfect hour. One question and be concise. Sure. Did we land on the moon?
I mean, I think we did, but I can't say it for certain. I was before my time, so
yeah, we did.
I think it's weird.
I'm pretty sure we did. I've spent so many hours, and I also know that there's tons of fake footage. There's more fake footage because in case everyone died, than there is real footage. So that's the problem. No one looks into it deep enough, and they're like, "It's impossible. We could have lost this technology in 50 years." Be like, are you kidding me? If it was all compartmentalized and secret, it would be so simple. There's no floppy disk. There's no internet. There's no way to keep it forever. It's like a piece of freaking paper. I mean, like, people just don't get it. When you take a rock from the moon and bring it to the earth, all you have to do is throw it into a field and there's no more rocks from the moon on the earth.
Yeah, I think that looking up is the biggest evidence is that you can see like the, people's footprints and the flag up there.
You can see every country that has ever landed there on the moon with a good enough telescope.
Yeah,
you can see the landing pads. And
it's weird that we haven't gone back though, like we just
we haven't gone back because we literally lost the will to do it.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And that's why I like the JFK moon speech is one of my favorite speeches to listen to. And I think people should listen to that because if you listen to it, he condenses down human history into 50 years. It's amazing to see how fast we progressed. And when you put it in that perspective, it feels like we've been progressing incredibly quickly. And I think you can put in the perspective of this technology as well and realize that this technology can unify us and give us common purpose. But you can also look at the perspective of, as our knowledge increases, our ignorance unfolds is one thing.
Yeah, let's just do a little thought experiment. In 1890, light came from matches and candles. We barely knew how to blow bottles.
Exactly.
We didn't have manufacturing. Manufacturing started after that. By 1950, we had adding machines that took up the space of an entire supermarket. That would be the size of a calculator. Just a decade later, a calculator fit in your hand. And now we have 3D facial recognition, high-speed internet in a tiny microchip that can fit in a watch. I mean, can you imagine in 5 decades that we'll be levitating and beaming ourselves from one place to the other? Yes, that's exactly 100%. Where we go.
Now, one last thing I want to mention is that you're looking at my YouTube here. There's a video there that says debunking the debunk. So there's been a number of debunk attempts on these videos. And in that one video in 9 minutes, I refute all of them right there. There's nothing that's remaining after I wipe that out. So again, these videos.
That's this one right here. The last one, 23 hours ago, debunking the debunk. It's only 9 minutes. Go get it and subscribe over at Ashton Forbes.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Diamond. I appreciate you having me on tonight. And I appreciate all your followers listening to this evidence. I think that this may be the largest verifiable conspiracy of all time. That's how big I think this is, especially if this technology is real.
I agree. And let's keep in touch, and any developments, let's go back on and let's bring the information to the people. I appreciate you, Ashton. You're one of the heroes.
Appreciate you.
Be safe.